Hi again. Dorothy Sayers, Creed or Chaos. Last chapter, the other 6 deadly sins. She's on deadly sin number 5, the 4th in her listing, and that is the sin of envy. And she's now talking about the era of the debunking, the great debunking. She says the years between the wars saw the most ruthless campaign of debunking ever undertaken by nominally civilized nations. Great artists were debunked by disclosures of their private weaknesses. Great statesmen by attributing to them mercenary and petty motives, or by alleging that all their work was meaningless or done for them by other people. Religion was debunked and shown to consist of a mixture of craven superstition and greed. Courage was debunked. Patriotism was debunked. Learning and art were debunked. Love was debunked, and with it, family affection and the virtues of obedience, veneration, and solidarity. Age was debunked by youth, and youth by age. Psychologists stripped bare the pretensions of reason and conscience and self-control, saying that these were only the respectable disguises of unmentionable unconscious impulses. Honor was debunked with peculiar virulence and good faith, and unselfishness as well. Everything that could possibly be held to constitute an essential superiority had the garments of honor torn from its back and was cast out into the darkness of derision. Civilization was finally debunked till it had not a rag left to cover its nakedness. It is well that the hypocrisies which breed like mushrooms in the shadow of great virtues should be discovered and removed. But envy is not the right instrument for that purpose, for it tears down the whole fabric to get at the parasitic growths. Its enemy, in fact, is the virtues themselves. Envy cannot bear to admire or respect. It cannot bear to be grateful. But it is very plausible. It always announces that it works in the name of truth and equity. Sometimes it may be a good thing to debunk envy a little. For example, here is a phrase which we have heard a good deal of late. These services, payments, compensations or whatnot, ought to not be made a matter of charity. We have a right to demand that they should be borne by the state. It sounds splendid, but what does it mean? Now, you and I are the state, and where the bearing of financial burdens is concerned, the taxpayer is the state. The heaviest burden of taxation is, naturally, borne by those who can best afford to pay. When a new burden is imposed, the rich will have to pay for most of it. Of the money expended in charity, the greater part, for obvious reasons, is contributed by the rich. Consequently, if the burden hitherto borne by charity is transferred to the shoulders of the taxpayer, it will inevitably continue to be carried by exactly the same class of people. The only difference is this: the people will no longer pay because they want to, eagerly and for love, but because they must, reluctantly, and under pain of fine or imprisonment. The result, roughly speaking, is financially the same. The only difference is the elimination of the 2 detested virtues of love and gratitude. I do not say for a moment that certain things should not be the responsibility of the state. That is, of everybody. No doubt those who formerly contributed out of love should be very willing to pay a tax instead. But what I see very clearly is the hatred of the gracious act, and the determination that nobody shall be allowed any kind of spontaneous pleasure in well-doing, if envy can prevent it. This ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. Then our nostrils would not be offended by any odor of sanctity. The house would not be filled with the smell of the ointment. It is characteristic that it should have been Judas who debunked that act of charity. I'll put a link into a video we did on Naboth. You might remember the man who stood on his rights of inheritance when the king of Israel, Jezebel's husband, tried to take his property, or desired to take his property because it was convenient and close by. Naboth, and what Walter Brueggemann had to say about him. Should there be a cap on capitalism? And next time, Sayers takes up the sixth deadly sin, sloth.